Do you feel like you should be having more fun backpacking, but you can't because you're worried about making mistakes, especially mistakes that older hikers are prone to? If that's the case, then you are in the right place because we're going to walk through the top backpacking mistakes that I see older hikers make. And I'm even going to share with you the ones that I am prone to. And we'll talk about how to avoid them so you can have a better adventure on your next backpacking trip. I didn't start backpacking until I was over 50, and although I have logged thousands of miles under my trail runners, I still make mistakes. If you look at some of the channels out there that cover things that have happened to hikers who have just completely disappeared or sadly lost their life on trails, it does make you think about how can I avoid making backpacking mistakes, especially backpacking mistakes that are common to older hikers. So I'm going to take you through my top 5 today, mistakes that I see older backpackers make, mistakes that I have made myself, and at the very end I will tell you about the one that I think is worst that I have made, that I continue to make and I work hard not to, but it's one that I find for me is a little bit tricky. But first, let's start with something that I see is really very common, especially among older backpackers who are also beginner backpackers, because they feel like they need to prove something. They feel like they need to prove that they're still fit, that they're still young, that they can still do this. And as a result, very often I see folks pushing too hard. Pushing too hard takes lots of forms. It could be hiking faster than you really should because you feel like you need to keep up with somebody. It could be not taking the time to take a break because people that you're hiking around are powering through. It could be taking, the main trail when there is a blue blaze that's available that might be more appropriate for your hiking skill level. The number one lesson here is that you need to listen to your body, listen to the voice of experience, your experience, not other people's experience, but your level of experience, and not push too hard because that is going to lead to accidents and injuries. Now, pushing too hard often comes as a result of, like I said, just being insecure about your age or your fitness level. It also comes from just when you're on a longer trail or a highly populated trail, having people just blow right by you. I remember very, very vividly when I was hiking the AT in Virginia and I was trying to get to a hostel by dark, and I came across this stretch of trail that was just literally rock hopping for as far as the eye could see. And at that point, I had not made friends with rocks. I hated rocks. I cursed rocks. And I got there, and as my usual style, which is a very cautious hiker, I was picking my way across these rocks, and somebody just went flying by me. He was dancing across the rocks, and he wasn't a 20-something. He looked like he might have been maybe mid-30s, but it was intimidating as all get out. I just, I wanted to stop right there and give up my hike. I was like, I can't do this. I can't keep up with these young people. But you know what? It doesn't matter. You don't have to push so hard. You don't have to keep up. As long as you're being true to yourself and you plan and train appropriately, it's completely okay to push to your own limits, to your own levels of fitness and experience. But don't push too hard to try to keep up to other people. You are not out there to prove anything. You're not out there to keep up with other hikers. You are out there to have a great time. So just be mindful that you're not pushing too hard for reasons that aren't appropriate. The second one, and this is just a really very small specific thing that I am guilty of myself, and that is not using your satellite communicator appropriately. I carry a Garmin InReach, but most of the time on my pack, I'm leaving it off. And I've realized recently that that's not the smartest thing, because even though I may not want to drop a pin every 10 minutes or so, as far as where my location is, if I was to have a catastrophic accident, if I were to trip and fall down a hill, if I, God forbid, had a stroke or a heart issue or something like that, I would not be physically able to activate that communicator. So if it is on instead of off, then at least it is pinging periodically. And if I set up pings to drop locations, pin locations, this is something that Garmin can do, and I don't know of all the features of the other communicators out there, but it's definitely worth checking if you're using a different brand. But drop some pins so that people know where you are, because if you do have an emergency like that, you want to narrow the search area as much as possible so that you can be found if somebody on the trail does not stumble across you and is not able to provide the aid and assistance that you need right away. So if you're carrying an inReach communicator or some other kind of satellite communicator, make sure that it's working for you and protecting you. And I know that none of us expect to have that kind of an emergency, but it happens. And when it does, the ending can be really sad, and I don't want that to happen to you. So you and I both need to start using our communicators more effectively so that they can really work for us in the event of an emergency. Now, my third point is related to that issue, and that is just skirting safety in general. A lot of us, I think, feel somewhat invincible as we get older, so it's kind of like this dichotomy of you either feel invincible or you feel not good enough, or maybe it's both. But if you're feeling invincible or you just don't want to carry the weight of extra safety gear, you probably want to think again. And this is even true if you're just going on a day hike, but you never know when a day hike might turn into a several day adventure, unplanned adventure, if you lose the trail and you end up having to stay out overnight. So the things that I would say you absolutely need to have are light and easy to carry. So I always have an emergency blanket with me, just one of those little Mylar blankets. And I think, well, I could use that if I need it, but it's also nice to have and be aware that I can provide assistance to somebody else if they had an emergency, if they got a broken bone or something like that and we're going into shock, then that would be the perfect thing to wrap around them until help can come. I also carry matches and a knife because you never know when you might need to cut something. And my knife is only this big, but it's super sharp and it gives me comfort. I don't have to carry a big old Bowie knife, but carrying a small knife can be extremely helpful, as can matches. And if you've got both of those, then you can create a fire with some little pieces of wood that would get you going so that you could signal in an emergency if you needed to. And a couple of other things that are not just safety, but good common sense is having a little bit of extra food, having snacks, particularly if you have issues with blood sugar. You want to make sure that you can manage that and that you have enough water and hydration, and even carrying some little electrolyte tabs would be a good idea, just in case you start to get dehydrated, that you can rehydrate yourself quickly. I also carry a water filter even on my day hikes because I just never know when I might need more water than I have, and it's nice to be able to filter it. And my Cat-O-Dine Be-Free filter weighs next to nothing, so I don't mind throwing it in my pack. Also, extra layers are good to have, especially if you're going in an area like, say, high elevation where the weather can change very quickly. Having a rain jacket or a sweatshirt or something like that is a good idea. And if you're through hiking, you're going to have those things in your pack. But I do find that through hikers, and I'm one of them, don't want to carry extra stuff. Like, I count how many Band-Aids am I carrying? How much wool do I have for blisters and things like that? You don't need to carry a lot. I do personally kind of have the philosophy when I'm through hiking that I just need to be able to get to the next town to take care of whatever problem I'm having. But the flip side of that is I'm assuming that those are minor problems. And if they are major problems, then it's going to be completely different. And I may need to shelter in place, essentially, and wait for help to come to me. And that is when I need that communicator. I need some first aid, even or something that you could wrap around a cut or a broken limb for support. Make a sling. Those kind of things are extremely important. If you have not yet taken a wilderness first aid course and you really do like being in the outdoors, then I would absolutely recommend that as well, because that's going to give you lots of skills and tips for things that you can do to either help yourself or help somebody else if there is an accident on the trail. And I think that would make you feel a lot more comfortable and make you feel good that you can help your fellow hikers if you need to. Another important safety issue, especially for older hikers, is just making sure that somebody knows where you're going to be. And I know on a through hike, it's easy to just get up in the morning and go because you're doing it every single day. But if you've got a way that you can leave an itinerary or text a family member and say, I'm leaving this spot and this is where I plan to camp the next night, that helps, because if something should happen along the way, there are bookends, if you will, for where the search should take place. If you're going to be out for a shorter backpacking trip or even a day hike, you can leave your itinerary in your car, because if you disappear and they find your car, if it's parked at a trailhead, that shouldn't be too hard, then they can at least determine where you are intending to be. And that's the next best thing to do if you don't actually let somebody know where you're going to be. And this is particularly important if you're hiking alone, but it can also be relevant if you're hiking with a buddy. So just make sure that people know where you're going to be, when you expect to be back, and what your emergency plans are if you have an issue. Like, let them know, I've got my Garmin. That's what I tell my family. I've got my Garmin, and you will find out if there's an issue. If you can't hear from me, it's going to come from the emergency personnel. Another thing that I see older backpackers do, and this is probably one that applies more to folks who've been backpacking for a long time, is not upgrading your gear. You may have a backpack that you have loved for 15 years. You might have a tent that has served you well for quite a long time. But there is a lot of gear out there these days that is better quality, lighter. So considering what you have, what your kit looks like, you might want to go through and say, is this gear still serving me well, or could I hike more comfortably or more safely if I went ahead and upgraded a piece or two here and there? If that's the case, do your research, look for items on sale, you can save some money, and then go ahead and make those changes. Don't hang on to things just for sentimental reasons, or because you feel like, well, I'm comfortable in this, I've used it for so long, I know how this backpack works, I know how it fits me. There's nothing wrong with having a tried and true backpack that you love, but you may want to make your hike a little bit more pleasant by upgrading some of that gear, or even adopting new gear that you haven't used in the past. Other things that fit into that category are updating, say, your shoes. Maybe you've been hiking in boots for a really long time and you're starting to have foot trouble, or you're starting to have blisters or knee issues. Maybe you want to try a different type of shoe, a trail runner or something like that. Don't be afraid to explore what's out there now just because you're really comfortable with what you've had for a long time. Don't make the mistake of sticking to the old things just because they are familiar and you're used to them. Make changes and upgrade, test new gear, and try things that could help you hike for even longer, even later into your life. The next mistake that I see a lot of older backpackers making is that they neglect recovery time. And I can be honest and say that I have slept for 12 hours on the trail when I have been tired, especially at the beginning of a thru hike. Those first few days can take a bit of a toll on you, even if you have trained a lot. Being out there day after day is tiring. And so if you need to go to bed at 7 and wake up at 7 in the morning, there is nothing wrong with that. Listen to your body and take the recovery time that you need. That includes taking breaks during the day, and even 0 days if you need to, or double zeros if you need to. If you've got some kind of an ache or a pain that needs to be addressed, take the time to make sure that's resolved before you carry on hiking. Because if you're hiking on an injury, odds are that something's going to happen and you're going to end up with more injuries. Like a good example would be, I had some foot pain at one point, and that was causing me to walk funny, and that caused an issue with my knee, and within a few days I could barely even walk. And it would have been a lot more intelligent for me to stop and take care of the foot pain instead of ending up having to take several days off because of the knee injury. Be mindful of your body and what it is telling you, and take the time that you need for rest and recovery along the trail. And I would encourage you, if it's a long trail like the Appalachian Trail or the PCT, that you sort of build that into your thru hiking plan. Sure, plenty of people do the AT in 5 months or even 6 months, but if you think that your body is going to need a little bit more love and care and nurturing, then why not plan 6.5 months? Allow yourself those 0 days, and don't put yourself in a position where you feel like, oh, crap, I gotta take some time off and now my schedule is just blown out of the water. You don't want that to happen. Just anticipate that in the beginning, and then if you end up finishing earlier because you didn't need to use those days, then that's great. My final tip, and this is one that I told you that I have not been good about, and I'm really, really trying hard to improve, and that is not taking the time to just indulge in the hike, indulge in the experience and savor everything about it. When I did the Trans-Catalina Trail just recently, I had sat down and just was enjoying a view one day. So I was doing that rest and recovery. I was like, I'm just going to sit here for half an hour and just soak in this view. I was thinking, you know what? I might never be here again. I have a whole long list of backpacking trails that I want to do, and I might never be on the Trans-Catalina Trail again. So I need to really, really enjoy this experience. And that evening I got into camp and I was talking to another older backpacker, and he said to me, without me saying anything at all, he's like, I don't think I'm ever going to do this trail again. So I really want to enjoy that experience. And that's my advice to you. Don't make the mistake of rushing through because you feel like you can only take X number of days to do the hike. Don't make the mistake of not taking side trails that you think might be interesting, or taking a day to do something cool in town, like, sitting in a hot spring if you're on the Colorado Trail. That's something I didn't do and I wish I had. So don't forget that you're out there to build lifelong memories, to have experiences that are going to carry you through those days when you can't be on the trail. And you want to make sure that if it's a once in a lifetime chance, just do it, enjoy it, indulge in those things. And even when it comes to little things that are going to make your hike better, don't be so obsessed with weight that you don't want to carry, say, a pump if you hate blowing up your sleeping pad. You know, there's some little tiny, like a flex tail pump that you could get that weighs almost nothing. And if that contributes to you having a better hike, then by all means, carry that. Take a pillow, take a nice pillow if that's what makes your hike better. All of those things are just important to having an experience that you're going to remember and that you're going to feel is really special. And you don't want to end a hike and feel like, wow, I didn't do that right. Because if there is not a chance to go back for whatever reason, whether it's money or time or family commitments, whatever it might be, you don't want to regret that you didn't do that hike the best way that you could for yourself. And that goes along with, you know, if you're hiking with other people and the whole idea of hiking your own hike, make sure that you're being true to yourself, that you are indulging in the experience, that you're savoring every moment in whatever way is most meaningful to you. And then you really truly will have those lifetime memories of backpacking trips that are just epic, things that so many people in this world don't get to experience. If you are blessed enough to be able to do them, make the most of them. And I will too. Thanks for being with me, and I hope that you'll take a moment to subscribe if you have not already. And if you want to learn more about my advice and tips for older backpackers, take a look up here. There's a great video, and I'll look forward to seeing you here again next time.